Okay, after after a cold pizza, a couple bottles of water, good little break, we're ready to tackle the rear suspension. We're gonna start by getting the rear upper struts unbolted. So for this, you're gonna have to remove the carpet. Here, there's some screws here for this. You can remove this plate to pull back the carpet. For mine, the carpet is just pretty loosely put in there, so I'm just gonna untuck it. Also, if you're looking to pull the plastics apart and stuff like that, this pulls back, and there are two plastic Phillips screws that go into interior clips. They don't work very well. They've got to be very careful with them, otherwise you'll pull them apart. Hang on just a moment. Okay, cool. So I just got interrupted by my neighbor. She wanted to tell me that her daughter loves my Christmas lights at my house, and she shamed her daddy into not having as many as me, and then it got into a whole neighbor conversation or whatever. But so we're just gonna go through them and get back to it. I'm going to pull this carpet back. So if you look, it just kind of pulls away from everything. Just pull it back here, and then there's a cover here. And a cover here. Those should go to the strut towers. I'm gonna go grab some stuff and pull them off, and then we'll get back and show you. Okay, so I have the covers off. These plastic covers here are they're just held on with two Phillips head screws. When you look at them here, so then there's the strut top here. This is a 16 millimeter locking nut. There is a flathead screwdriver slot in here, so that way you can hold the strut still while you pull them off. Now that we have those exposed, I'm gonna get the car lifted up and get ready to do the springs and pull the struts out. Okay, so I've been kind of tired and lazy and slowing down quite a bit getting the back. I undid the top hats and went to go jack the rear of the van up, and even in safety third fashion, my jack stands were too small. So went and spent a little bit more money for some bigger jack stands. We're gonna get all that stuff sorted out, lift it up, and then we'll get the rear suspension out of this thing, tell you where all the bolts and stuff are, and then get it done. Cool, thanks. Okay, so after a couple of phone calls, some busy stuff, we finally have everything ready to film, get this stuff done. Going with our safety third, I have my new upgraded jack stands. They're under there. I have my ramps set in a don't squish me configuration, so that way if it does fall, it's just gonna fall on the ramp and not crush me to death. Everything's pretty secure. I have the jack underneath the differential, so we're pretty much good to go here. Like I said before, if you come up here, you remove this plate, pull your carpet back, remove these plates if you need to, and then the tops are here. 17 millimeter. I used a wrench and a flathead screwdriver to loosen these ones. You could probably use some Teach Me How to Dougies or Uggy Duggies with the impact to get them off. I'd use that on the bottom. I liberally applied some PB Blaster to everything, and it still didn't quite work. So now that we're set up here, we're gonna go ahead and do our springs first. So with the springs, they recommend that you remove the lower here, which is also a 17 mil, also has the flathead configuration. These are already loose. And then what you have is you have a hard brake line, and your hard brake line is here, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4 12 millimeter bolts. Now on this hard brake line, you're gonna pull these bolts completely out, and it's gonna give you the flex you need to be able to drop the springs out. The third in this sequence here is a T manifold for the brake lines. Now you do not want to open the brake lines. You want to just loosen the 12 millimeter bolt, or remove it, I guess I would say, so that you can flex on that. Attached to that is a rubber hose, which you do not want to break. So you'll have to make sure that you keep everything supported with the jack. Let's see if I can get you up here. Okay, so here is your T manifold. I'm gonna try to tap my screen so it'll focus a little bit better. There we go. So here's your 12 millimeter bolt. It is on top. Do not remove these. I know this is shining like it's got some oil and stuff on it. Really, it's just the PV blaster I used to remove this bolt here. Make sure you don't lose your bolts, obviously, because that would put you in a bad way. Your other bolt here is right there, and you'll remove that one. You want to remove everything except for the outermost bolts, which are right here and on the same spot on the other side on the axle. Once you have these out, then you should have enough play in that to do it. Once all of those are removed, excuse me, that sun is extremely offensive right now. You'll remove your sway bar end links right here. These are 14 millimeter bolts. I recommend that you very much put as much PV blaster on these as you can. They were very stuck. I couldn't even use the impact to get it out. No oogie duggies there. I had to use a breaker bar to get this side out. It was quite the excursion. So once you remove that, you move back to the other side, which I probably could have started with, but I want to do it in sequence for you guys. Once again, you're right here with your sway bar. And it just thudded down. If you notice underneath, I have quite a bit of rust on mine, such as the 30-year-old Toyota Hiace. With those, now what we can do is loosen our lower strut mounts here, which I'm gonna try to do with my fingers, but I'm sure it's not gonna work. Once again, that's a 17 millimeter, which you'll have to excuse me, I was trying to read on my thing where it was. So also, when you're removing these, especially if you're using the same parts to replace it, which I am redoing the studs, so that'll help. You have your nut, your flat washer, your bushing, all right? Then you'll have your axle, bushing, flat washer. On mine, he said to use the stock flat washer, which I actually did not have there. So possibly he means this one. Mine came with some that looks like they may fit in there. We will give it a check once we get there. So now we have that side. We're gonna make our way over to the other side and undo it. Right here. So that's a really good view. 17 mil nut with your flat head inside. These are the OEM ones. The KYB ones have the little nipple on them. So like this one here, it's spinning my strut because I didn't get it as loose as I thought I had. Something like that's giving me not a good angle at this. Once again, I have 30 years of rust on this thing. It's pretty chowdered up. So make sure that you do use a lot of PB blaster, remember nut, washer, bushing, right? So then there we go. These aren't too bad. I probably will just clean them up real quick before we assemble them. So now here we're set to lower the differential. I'm gonna try to get you guys a good position to watch this while I do it. And that looks pretty good. So as you do that, your struts are going to go ahead and pop out of there. Get the bushings and stuff are on there real tight. You want to make sure that you don't lose them, or at least you remember the order that they go in. When you're doing the springs, so for this, I'm pretty sure I got to move my my don't squish me ramps. Putting the ramps there also helps protect the drums and stuff like that in case anything were to fall or fail. I was reading with their stuff. When you go and pull these and you go to do the springs, you need to make sure that you take note of which way the springs are inside of the axle here. So you have a round end here, and then you have a flat end here. Look at the way the spring is inserted in here. It is just a little bit too high still. When you're doing this also, make sure that you take notice of your brake line so that you're not putting too much stress on it. If you notice, I still have quite a bit of slack in mine. It's not pulling taut on it or anything like that, so we're in really good shape there. Now that we have this down, we should be able to pull the spring out, which mine, I'm a little stuck there. So if you noticed, I think that was the rubber on the other spring letting go. I can't seem to get it to come past the bump. There we go. Okay, so those should come out fairly easy. I'm gonna hold this in the same position because I need to make sure that the rubber gasket goes on the same way as well. All right, so with the spring out, you can tell that the lower end of the spring, the round end, and then the upper end, which is the flat, and then you have your gasket. So your gasket also has a position for it. Now, newer ones of these may have a good spot for it, but if you also know the end of it, inside of it here is flat, there's a flat edge also up here, so you should be able to make sure that you get the spring in correctly. They also said make sure that you do that, as you may cause problems at the end of things. So we're gonna go ahead and just install a rubber gasket, which should just sit on there. Our new springs should go in right here. Now with this, I am probably, with the lift springs, I'm probably going to have to lower this a little bit. I do have some spring compressors that I can use. For the sake of what we're doing, I'm gonna go ahead and use the spring compressors. They say when they do it at their shop, they don't have to. I assume it's on level ground and it's a little bit safer to be able to pry and jerk on your axle here to get it low enough. I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll get back to you. Okay, so interruptions, spring compressor didn't work, ended up using some leverage and just making sure that I kept the brake line in check. But some things I wanted to talk about here is this is the difference between your springs. So here, obviously your stock ones, Mine have seen better days. They're all rusted and corroded and stuff, and these are your lift springs. I mean, there's quite a big beefy difference there. So as far as that goes, we're gonna go ahead and put this other one in here on this side. I kind of figured it out a little bit better, so I can actually do it while you guys watch, and it make a little bit more sense by placing you guys right here. Okay. So, like they mentioned, these springs have a specific way that they sit. The lower cup, which actually doesn't move on this one. So what I'll be able to do is just show you up underneath here. It has a hole, and in the lower cup, if it moves, it also has a hole, and then there's two humps, one right here and one right here, that helps it fit into place. And that gives you a place for the circular end of the spring. That's a good lineup mark for you so that you don't mess up where you're putting your spring at. I was trying to put this in on the spring, and it was getting stuck, the rubber movement, blah blah blah. It was kind of a big pain in my ass. So what I've been doing, or what I did to the other side to finally figure it out, is I put the spring in place, get it lined up, right? Make sure that my brake line has got the room in there. And then what I was doing is, my high ace has the spindle jack. I do not have a bottle jack, which kind of sucks. I wish I had a small bottle jack, but I've just been using it. Put it right here in on the frame, which I didn't get it in the right spot, so it actually locks into place. This is definitely a safety third move, but hey, I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do when you're working by yourself. If I had a friend to just kind of compress this down, it would have been a lot easier. Once again, that's one of those things, just to show you that you can do it any way you want. Don't risk yourself for it. I am willing to, just because I'm not too worried about it here. So all I do is just incrementally twist this down while keeping an eye on that brake line, making sure that I don't bend the hard lines too much. They're just there for that little bit of flex. No kinks. Make sure that that rubber line does not lose any slack. So then once I did that, twist it. And then place this to where the tongue part here lines up with this. Once again, this has a flat spot in it, so you really shouldn't be able to put it in wrong. But if you're not paying attention, I can see it happening very easily. So now it slid down just a wee bit more for the sake of doing it. Okay. Cool. So the flat part in, tongue part. Double check on the bottom that the round end is hooked up in there. I'm just gonna let this down slowly, making sure that my spring finds its way into the rubber properly, so that it doesn't twist. Cool. So that right there, that's both the springs. There will be some editing to this so that you can see it more in my actual operating time on it, once you have kind of a good plan as to what you're doing. Next, we're going to get inside and we're going to go ahead and drop these struts out so that we can put the new ones in. And while we do that, it's a 17 mil. I already have them loosened, so we're just gonna go through and give it the good old Huggy Duggy treatment. There we go. Got this nut. It's kind of a little bit of a thing here. I guess that's why they want you to use the other gaskets and stuff for it. You do that. You just heard it fell out. I already have everything pretty much underneath cleared. So then we'll just fold this back on this side, right here. So remember, when you pull these off, make sure that you remember what order these go in. If you don't remember what order they go in, then it'll kind of screw stuff up for you. So like I said, on this side, the OEM flat washers are still in there, so I probably won't have to replace them. On that note, when you're setting things up, I have everything over here set up. So this is from bottom to top: nut, jam nut, flat washer, bushing. These are the ones that come with it, so it should go body, OEM bushing or OEM washer, which I just showed you guys is in there, bushing, flat washer. Then your top half of your strut is going to be your flat washer, your bushing. So I'm going to go ahead and get these over here, and we'll go ahead and get them set up to get put back inside. Okay, well, unfortunately we got a little pressed for time with the sun going down here. So I just went ahead and started putting some of this stuff together. Some stuff to know. All right, so from the bottom to the top, you have your jam nut, your regular nut, a brand new washer, the bushing, the mount, the bushing, and another brand new washer, right? I still have to put my boots back together with the zip ties, redo my 12mm bolts here, and my sway bar end lengths. And then on the inside, you'll have, actually at the top, you will have, let's get you in here real good, so you won't be able to see it from here very well, but you have your washer, your bushing, the body of the vehicle, and then on the inside you'll have the OEM washer, the bushing, the brand new washer, the nut, and then you'll also have your other jam nut, which will secure to the top here and lock them into place. I'm gonna go ahead and try to get all this stuff put back together, try to get maybe some pictures with a voiceover later for it. But for the most part, today ended up a little wonky, and for my first time doing it, I ran into a lot of challenges that I took care of off camera, but I explained them. One was getting the new springs in. I mean, I'm not in the safest environment. I recommend that you do this on a flat surface. I do not recommend that you ever follow anything that I do other than the steps for what bolts, what size, and then taking them out. Other than that, what you see is just for show purposes.